Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of X Quadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, Stephanie. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Actually, this is one of the highlights of my week, actually, having this chat with you.
Well, of course, any time spent with the chic Parisian Stephanie is always a highlight in my diary too, so this is good.
Oh, God, you're not as stuffy as you make out.
And yeah, well, there you go. I know I've trying to look professional and sensible today, but yeah, it's been a busy week so far, so I'm pretty tired. So I'm relying on you to kind of energize me and give me the, get me into my Freddie Mercury mode and everything else, and we'll get going on today's topic, right? Which is another impact multiplier, and it's a juicy one.
Yes, it's one of my favorites, actually. Well, it's not one of my favorites to experience, but it's one of my favorites to tackle. And I'd love any tips or tools to help with that. And I think it's something worth sharing in common with everyone.
Yeah, and that's friction and drama, right? How to address friction and drama.
Yeah, the magic tool to make all our lives easier.
Yeah, so you'll be glad to know I've actually got, a 3-point plan that just immediately takes out any friction and drama from every company. So we're good.
Oh, excellent. Yes, it's really easy.
Exactly. Well, okay, well, perhaps that's not quite the case. We know this, humans are messy, and when you bring people together in an organization, it's complicated. I like to say, organizations, we've traditionally thought of them as machines in many ways. We've talked about re-engineering them and, restructuring and everything, but they're really organisms, right? They're organisms, they're living, breathing, they've got cells and organs, teams and people within the organization. And it's all those interrelationships which make things complicated, right? But also have potential to create fantastic innovation and everything else that we know.
Yeah, I like the idea of comparing it to sort of a body and all the organs, because not only is it lots of complicated or simple structures inside which make us who we are and help us achieve what we do, but it's also that a point of failure in one place or an external event somewhere else can lead to all sorts of cascades and consequences if they're not addressed. And I think that's the friction and drama element is something that really plays into that. It impacts the bonds between the different elements and stops them working properly. Yeah,
exactly. So ideally, our organization is a multiplier, right? We're talking about impact multipliers, how we scale the impact. This is, this we've noticed in the series. And ideally, it's the multiplier, and we think we've got more people, more resources, we can really make a difference, and that's true. But sometimes it feels that the organization, it creates drama, friction, stress. It slows things down almost, right? Rather than creating this virtuous cycle of collaboration that we dream of.
Yeah, well, we've all been part of restructures or reorgs, which are supposed to deliver massive improvements, efficiencies, outcomes, but which, when you're going through it, it's kind of stressful and it's hard and it doesn't always deliver the outcomes that necessarily expect.
Yeah, because you're swapping seats on the bus, but if you've not actually addressed those interpersonal dynamics, they're still going to be there, just in a different configuration when you come out the other side of the reorg.
Yeah.
So, what I see is that there's probably a few specific areas where in the 21st century, and by the way, just a nice call out to all you listeners out there who are in the 22nd century or, perhaps the next millennium, which obviously by then it'll be vintage archive footage. that will be, probably broadcast, around the galaxy, Stephanie. So, we're really
Yeah,
pioneering here.
definitely.
But at least in the 21st century, there are some pretty clear inhibitors to collaboration that I think quite unique to this epoch that we live in, right, with the internet and everything and technology.
Yeah, because I guess at its heart, and we'll get onto this, friction and drama is something that happens because relationships aren't quite right, or communication is not quite right, and there's a number of sort of baseline elements which, if they're not properly aligned, then create this outcome. And so it's both. I think we'll cover this in our conversation. It's not just about preventing it, but also addressing it when it happens. What are the baselines?
Yeah, and right now we've got a lot of, we're living through lots of virtual teams, which can get very easily transactional, right? When a team's virtual, it can just focus on the task and doesn't really build the coffee, I always say coffee cooler, right? It's the water cooler or coffee machine conversations, right? Those don't always happen. Don't necessarily take the time on a web conference to really connect on a personal level with people that you might if you were around the physical conference room.
Yeah, I mean, you're missing a lot of the social cues when you're not physically present. You need those social cues to build trust and to build understanding. So it's not surprising that relationships suffer, and that means being more proactive about dealing with those friction points, and trying to avoid the drama, or at least address the drama and not leave it like an elephant in the room. Yeah,
and absolutely, and so you've got so Zoom culture. Everyone loves a nice web conference, especially in 2020, right after the COVID lockdowns. Everyone's totally fed up of so many of these Zoom calls or Teams or whatever it is that we're using, and on top of that, there's constant reconfiguration, right? Teams change faster than ever, right? We've got cross-functional teams. People are coming in and out of teams the whole time. Project teams are being set up. We're working across boundaries. So collaboration is harder than ever because it's not stable. We used to be able to have perhaps an organization and we pretty much work with the same people for quite a while. And now there's more and more people coming in and out all the time. It's often done virtually, globally, across time zones, over screens. And often, we have to work with people who are not in our hierarchies. So all those things magnify the issues.
Magnify the issues, and I guess also, sometimes the issues, like the drama that happens, might have nothing to do with, you see the drama and you're impacted by the drama, but it has nothing to do with anything that you're doing, But the fact of the matter is, we are constantly working in all sorts of, as you said, matrices or different relationships all over the place. And so that creates different tensions, and it creates, you need to grease the wheels, because sometimes things are going to get stuck, and sometimes you're not going to see it coming. And if you really want to be a multiplier as a leader, not only do you have to try and address it proactively, but you really need to address it when it happens.
Right, and I love that proactive thing you mentioned, because that's getting strategic. I'm a strategist at heart, and this is the idea of the multipliers. It's rather than just trying to add on here and add on there. It's like, how can we release this extra impact and extra growth in the company? And often it's addressing those roadblocks and friction and drama. It's like, okay, how do I put oil in this system, right? How do I do that thing that's going to be a one-off, or one-off, but a small bit of oil into this big system that's going to make everything work a lot better and allow us to move forward. So I think my Freddie Mercury quote for today, which we have to have obviously, is from a little-known song. So it's going to be an opportunity to go out and Google it or whatever, or find it on social media. It's from one of their last albums. It's "I Can't Live With You." I can't live with you, but I can't live without you is how the kind of chorus goes. And that sums it up, because it's like, it can be painful, right? And sometimes we're like, if we just didn't have any people, it would be so much easier. but we know we can't live without
Yeah.
people and without our team, and we want to get it working.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add a little nuance, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I know is a strategy that some leaders and some businesses use, that sometimes friction can be a positive thing, in that, you know, friction creates, it can be competitiveness between team members, which can push people to achieve that little bit further. So it's not that friction is a bad thing, but it's not that it's a good thing, it's just it needs to be managed properly. Because drama is definitely a bad thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I think there can be tensions within the system that you deliberately set up, but I think tensions are different from friction. Friction is when things are rubbing together and slowing things down, right? Friction is a resistance force, and so that's kind of how I would see it. It's like, where are the issues which are actually just slowing us all down because of the internal ways that we're working?
Yeah. So I guess, Richard, you've never worked in an organisation where there's been any friction or drama.
Well, not any of my organisations. Obviously, they've all been perfect and wonderful. Well, actually, it's a good place to start, perhaps, because I've probably got 3 or 4 points here that I think it'd be good to discuss. And the first one, which I didn't necessarily think I was going to cover, but let's go there, is start with ourselves, because often we kind of look at the organization and go, well, we got this friction and drama because these people over here, they kind of like, they're not performing, they're no good, they're whatever, right? But let's look in the mirror first of all. Assume that whatever's going on in the organization is a leadership failure, and actually assume that we have a part, we have a responsibility in that. That actually is empowering because we can do something about it then. But I think if we just put the blame on everybody else, we become the victims, and it's like, oh, these people, they don't know how, they're always gossiping, they're always complaining, they're resistant to change. It's always the other person. And I think we need to go, okay, how do I actually create resistance, drama? Perhaps people react to me in a certain way. I can be a fairly abrasive, I can be strong-willed personality. So I've been in situations where, I've probably steamrolled over people or dismissed people a bit too verbally or whatever it is, right? And then you have to look back and go, that probably did not actually empower and enable the organization in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's back to one of your earlier points in one of our other conversations, which is, we're all great at behaving well when we're under no pressure, when we're in a controlled environment. But the fact of leadership, the fact of the ambitious people is that we are under pressure. And so we are going to make mistakes. And we are, when people, when there's friction, it takes more than one person to create friction. There's and I'm aware of it myself. And I think in common with most sort of leaders, when you've got a clear sense of purpose or a vision, you tend to steamroll. You leave people feeling sort of disempowered. But you can also end up in a situation where you yourself are, people don't want to work with you, or you have team members who don't want to work together, and it is, I think you're right, you've got to look in the mirror when those circumstances are right, because there's going to be some element which you're influencing that's creating that behavior.
Yeah, and one of those areas can be the hub and spoke model. So often I can see, especially CEOs, they know their team pretty well individually, but they haven't created a context where the team really their executive team works with each other. So we can get onto that a bit later, but that's an example of actually particular leadership style actually limiting the impact of everybody else around them. So so looking in the mirror, I think is an important thing. It's a deeper subject than perhaps for today, but I think it's important to realize that we set the culture as leaders. But perhaps the first place to go is realizing that this is a systematic question, right? Where there's friction and drama in an organization, it's not just an individual or two individuals. It's not just a team or two teams. There's a whole system at play.
Yeah.
And we tend not to look at that. We tend to look at the symptom, and we tend to address the symptom, like, oh, these people are resistant to change, or whatever it is. But there's a lot more going on. There's compensation, there's incentives, there's pressure coming down on people.
Yeah, history, experience is not just a relationship thing. I 100% agree. I think there's so many factors which play in. And it's, it's the one thing out of alignment makes the whole thing just not work quite so well. And it actually, I also think friction and drama is it's not an early warning system, but it is a warning system that something's not right.
Yeah, and often we build cultures in organizations based on what has been proven to work. So I'm working with a company, and they've got some geographical silos emerging, and it's simply because they've tried to work across geographies together. And in the past, it's never really quite worked, because actually everybody had very regional incentives. And so they've tried a couple of times to bypass the incentives and just do it anyway. And in the end, they get bogged down, and they're trying to do internal transfer rates and whatever it is in the organization, and they didn't really work. It's simpler to do it ourselves. And so a culture has grown up of, we should just do it ourselves. And then a bit of mistrust about doing it with other parts of the organization. And that's just a mixture of, incentives on one hand, history on the other hand, just taking root in a company.
So what would you say is, I think it's all very well, we understand what might be the causes, but how can you keep an eye on it, or how can you be strategic about looking at those kinds of systematic failures, or what direction would you go then? What's your recommendation in terms of addressing this kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of things. So I think the first one is just to think through what are the factors at play. What is the water that these fish are swimming in? I like to put it. The fish doesn't think that it's swimming in water. It's like, what water? So what is the water that these fish are swimming in? What's the culture and the setup that we have put in place? What are the boundary conditions we're working within? And just to think through, what is going on? What are people being incentivized by? What are the priorities that they've been given? Often we take a big complex company with lots of interrelationships, we divide it into tiny little segments, and we get everyone to optimize their own segment. And so no wonder if we and all these parts of the machine have feedback loops on each other. So marketing is trying to generate the biggest number of leads, sales want to generate the highest conversion rate on the leads marketing you're giving them. Customer care wants the highest quality product. CFO wants the lowest priced process. All these things are trade-offs that we need to make. But when you actually break it all up into all these different areas and you incentivize people on their own microcosm of the system, it's no wonder that we get friction and drama emerging. So the first thing I'd say is just step back and think about it, and perhaps do literally a mind map on a particular issue that you see. Literally draw your mind map and just start brainstorming what are the components, just to get a sense of it. What I would do is then think about structure and life. So structure and life, think about a trellis, a frame, a grid, and then a vine or a plant growing on that grid, on that trellis, on that framework. And the life is often what we focus on, but the question is, what is supporting and holding up that life? So in many organizations, the life is, it's the team and the work and all the things being done. But what's the structure? What are the meetings that we have? Who are we? What's the communication protocol?
What are the tools that we use?
Yeah.
How often do we see each other? Where are we located?
Yeah. How often do we spend talking? How much time do we spend building relationships rather than delivering tasks? How much do we step back looking at our behaviors and adjusting those with each other, or are we just focused on the result achievement? One exec I spoke to this week had a nice idea. He said he's actually taken to using different communication channels to signal his intent with his team. So if he's WhatsApping them, then that's going to be like a casual, how you doing? How's the family? Just checking in with you kind of conversation. If it's on Microsoft Teams, it's more of a like, let's get creative and kind of like think about new ideas for the business, and be a bit more open-ended in our discussion. And if we're going to have a WebEx video call, then it's more of a structured, formal business review session. So for example, he's used to using that as a way of building some structures. So you can kind of have a look, have I got a mixture? And also signaling to people what kind of conversations we're having, but it also allows him to check, am I having all the right sorts of conversation with people remotely? So I think the life is, the structure around the life. What are the meetings? What are the conversations? What are the topics? What are the systems we have in place? But that's all obviously the kind of the systematic side. But then we need to start to think about, well, what are we going to actually do about it? And where do we start in the system?
This is just a quick interlude before we get back to today's main conversation. To celebrate the launch of the podcast, we're giving away, for the first time ever, a coaching package valued at over $3,000. You can use it yourself, or you can give it to a friend or colleague who wants to multiply their impact. To enter, all you have to do is leave a review of the podcast on iTunes or in your preferred podcast app, and send a screenshot to podcast@xquadrant.com. And do that before 15th of September 2020. If you do miss that deadline, then leave a review before the 15th of October, and there'll be a chance to win a smaller coaching package. For all the details, head to xquadrant.com/podcasts. Reviews are the lifeblood of any podcast, and so whether or not you're within the eligibility time, it would still be fantastic if you would leave us a review if you like the podcast, or if you see the potential in the future as we continue to refine it, develop it, and add to it. Many thanks, and let's get back to that conversation.
And my second point, really, the first one is to look at the system as the first place. My second point would be start with the executives.
Because it's it's very easy to point the finger elsewhere, or to assume that the discontent is coming from the ground up, or the friction is coming from the ground up. But generally, we're all children at heart. We kind of emulate the behavior of the people we respect, or the people we sort of look up to every day, which will be leadership. If you've got the right kind of leadership, even if you've got the wrong kind of leadership, people are going to be looking up and emulating that kind of behavior. Yeah,
no organization can be healthier than its number one team.
Yeah.
You cannot, you cannot assume that. Well, I always say to, if I'm working with a CEO, I say, well, look at your executive team. If we could make every team in the company just like that, in terms of the trust, the teamwork, the shared goals, the energy, all those things, relationships, would that be a good thing? Have you got something you're ready to multiply in the business? This is all about multiplication. You have to have something to multiply. So I would start by saying, on the team level, do you have a team in the executive team, which is a model? And most probably executives say to me, actually, we're a bunch of high performers, but we're not a high performing team, actually, at the executive level.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. I think I just thinking back to an experience I've had. So I've always worked prior to recently in the services side of businesses, and the great sort of truism is that services and sales don't get on together, and they're always at loggerheads, because sales are selling stuff and services are going, what the hell are they selling? And sales people are trying to grow the business by closing deals and saying, why are services getting in the way? And I've worked, and when I think about my career path, I worked in the first organization I worked in. sales and services, you rotated through services and sales. So there weren't two teams. So I took it for granted, and I didn't realize that there was supposed to be much attention. I just took it for granted that, we're all part of the same team.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And then when I changed companies, I moved into a leadership role where I was running a services team, and I had, there was a different team, which was a sales team, which I had to work with. And I took it for granted that, we'd collaborate and work together, and I didn't pay attention to it. And because I didn't pay attention to it, then we started getting lots of friction in terms of closing deals, delivering projects, because just the communication just wasn't there. There was a lack of trust. We were just not addressing, and it wasn't a problem with the customers, it wasn't a problem with the product. What was happening is that we were just creating a sticky mess in terms of not just my ability to work with my counterpart, but our own team is sort of retrenching. Because often you come into an organization and there's existing teams. So, and then I moved on from there, and then I paid extra attention to it. And suddenly, I saw the warning signs earlier, was able to address it, and I felt like I built a really good relation, a very collaborative relationship with my sales counterpart. And I think there's a little bit of, when you get to a senior level, you haven't seen it all, but you've seen a lot of it. And it's about finding focus on, in terms of my objectives or the company's objectives, our mission, what are the most important relationships that we've got to get right in terms of the function. You can't get on well with everyone all of the time. You're not going to be able to stamp out all friction points, but where are the key relationships? Where are the key areas which need to just work without needing supervision? So that's what friction creates. You need supervision. And that's what you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, it reminds me of, is it Franklin Roosevelt said, I'm not sure it was him, it was somebody like that, who said, I've never been able to solve a problem by making it smaller. I always have to make it bigger. And I think that's helpful, because actually when you make a problem bigger, right, so rather than how optimize my services organization, right, it's like, how do we completely wow customers and deliver the most best, then suddenly you can then rally other people behind that, and you can start to solve the higher level problem together. And I see this all the time. I mean, working with a multinational on a big technology strategy initiative, let's describe it like that. And I went through all the interviews and discussions with people, and part of it comes down to trust and alignment in the executive team. I mean, on the surface, it wasn't anything to do with that. It was all about how we're going to build a relationship with a new partner and roll things out and all the rest of it. When you actually look at what's going to hold things back, it's actually, we don't really trust each other in this group team. Don't really trust each other. And as I said, no organization can be healthier. So any cracks in the leadership team of an organization are going to ripple through and actually propagate across the whole organization. It's incredibly difficult.
And I actually think trust is the oil which helps unstick friction points. And the great example is whether a misunderstanding becomes a friction point or just a minor bump in the road. Misunderstandings either stick around and become stickier and stickier because there's a lack of trust. Or a misunderstanding allows the conversation or the understanding that, oh God, she was a real nightmare today. Really steamrolled me, and then you never move on from that. See, that sticks. Or if you have the trust, you're able to have that open conversation, go, hang on a minute, what's going on? And sort those things out.
And that is a key thing you can do very practically as a leader, which is to really insist upon a culture where you go directly to the source when you have an issue. So there's too much in organizations, way too much people who are allowed to go up the chain, to go down the chain, to make their point known. And it's totally toxic because it doesn't actually resolve any issues. You just get a slap from somebody, from your boss going, I don't know, apparently I've got to slap you about this thing. I don't even know what's going on. The tool I use is address or amplify. So when somebody comes to you to let off steam, oh, I can't believe what, Stephanie did or Richard did or whoever it is, they did this, I'm really annoyed with them. At that point, you've got a choice as that third party, You either basically turn them around, say you need to go and talk to them and have the discussion. You need to address it. And if you do that, you create the opportunity for resolution and breakthrough and relationship and a deeper understanding. Or you can amplify it. You can go, oh yeah, you're right, I've had that experience too, they're jerks, blah, blah, blah. And you amplify it and you get gossip and drama. And those are the two choices.
Yeah, and the address choice is not an easy one, because what you'll get is, and I've experienced this, you'll get resistance from the person who's escalating something to you. And so as a leader, I've had at various times team members escalate to me and go, so-and-so is really annoying, so-and-so is not working properly with me. And when sometimes it's been really hard to do the pushback and say, well, have you talked to that person about it? No, and people because it's a difficult conversation to have. So then you have to coach people. You have to turn into, instead of doing the quick fix, which is passing on the message, doesn't really address the problem. You've then got to coach people into having difficult conversations.
Exactly, and that's why if you can start at the executive team and say, this is the way we're dealing it, right? So you create the culture of, if you're going to come to me, I'm going to push it back to you. Have you talked to them? And if you have and it hasn't worked, okay, well then let's have a three-way conversation. But that is the way that you're going to nip things in the bud. And when you can create a culture where people start to learn that that's the way it is, it does, and it will permeate into the approach. And people start to realize it works. Oh, Stephanie wasn't deliberately trying to undercut me in that meeting. She was thinking about this, right? Oh, I didn't get that. That was a communication misstep. We didn't quite pick up on that. You don't understand that, and you end up living in your own internal world if you don't do it. So address or amplify. It's a key thing. When an organization has too much friction and drama, address or amplify is a key concept that people need to know.
I think one health warning though is if you're moving towards an address versus amplify approach, and if it's a change to your normal approach or a change to company culture, make sure your own boss knows about it, because otherwise what will happen is your team member will come to you, say, can you help, pass on the message, and they'll get frustrated that you're resisting just being a messenger, and they will escalate. If that's part of the company culture, they will escalate to your boss. And so if your boss isn't briefed and doesn't understand what you're trying to do, then that's going to create a friction.
Right, and that's why I'm saying, that's why I say, from the CEO perspective, start at the executive team, really make sure that is modeled, because then you can multiply it. Once the executive team actually know that they can't bitch about each other to the CEO, then, and they start to see, oh yeah, actually these conversations aren't always easy, but actually it's getting better, right? We're actually learning and we're actually getting closer. I liken it to hedgehogs, it's like when you start to get pricked by the other person, it means that you're kind of getting closer to them, in fact, right? It's easy to be polite and at a distance. In fact, that reminds me of the joke about British people, if they're if they're really polite to you, they don't like you. If they make fun of you, then you're their friend. And if they don't speak to you, they're in love with you.
Cultural differences. Very true. I think that's so stereotypical. It's actually true.
It's sad, isn't it? So building this collaboration culture, and we talked about trust, and it's one of those words that gets bandied around. And there's two sorts of trust. I think it's important to see. Do I trust you to deliver? To do what you'll say? And that is about really things about accountability there, and making sure that you're not putting words in people's mouths, but people get an opportunity to say, yes, I commit to that. And then you hold them accountable. Well, you hold them accountable to themselves, right? You say, you promised this, right? And then there's the other sort of trust. And the other sort of trust is the deeper level, which is, do I trust you to take good care of a weakness that I have? Do I trust you enough that I can share a vulnerability and not have it used against me?
Yeah.
And get to those level of conversations which are a bit edgy. And again, that is where I see so much potential that doesn't get tapped into. When an executive team or any team can actually really has each other's back genuinely, and you can trust each other that actually I can fail and it's going to be okay. People are going to perhaps stop me from failing, even, right? Get there before I fail, or whatever it is. Or if I don't know something, whatever, then I'm supported. That is super important, right? It comes to the essence of psychological safety. Everyone talks about it, but do we actually spend time building that level of trust? Very rarely. It's relegated to like a 2-hour session on your offsite every year.
Yeah, and if as a leadership team, and as a leader, back to your original point, people emulate the behaviours and the frictions that they see in their leadership. Yeah. And so you've just, if it all is a 2-hour leadership team meeting, you're not going to see the impact multipliers. You have to really actually make the effort to put in place these trust mechanisms. The address or amplifier, I love that. That's going to stick in my brain. Just to get to where you need to get to, and you just got to reinforce.
Yeah, and so I think when it comes to creating this collaboration culture, there's a few things, right? So the first one is, trust, is key. The second one is the balance of contributions, right? Most teams have 20% of people doing 80% of the talking. And actually, when you do that, people they don't feel heard. They don't feel they can speak up. They don't feel that they are given a chance to really bring their best. Often in executive teams, that's a mixture of personality-based dynamics, and it's this sense of a functional culture, right? Where people are very much in their silo. So the marketing person just talks about marketing, their speciality. The salesperson talks about sales, their speciality. The operations officer talks about operations, and they don't feel they can actually have been given permission to talk across the business, because they feel I'm stepping on people's toes and everything else. And actually that's a killer, because most CEOs end up feeling like the person in the restaurant who's left picking up the bill, even when everyone's agreed to pay their part, and realizes that it doesn't all add up. Everyone says they've paid their bit.
Yeah.
And it's always a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's always a little bit. And most CEOs, I think, feel like that. It's like, yeah, everyone's highly responsible, for their bit to the business, but the overall business outcomes that I want are not being delivered on. And that's this issue of creating a high-performing team rather than a team of high performers, and creating the shared goals. It's probably a topic for another conversation, but friction and drama, the drama is more obvious, but the friction can just be there because people are not able to even contribute. I suppose that's my point here.
Yeah. I think we've talked quite a lot about friction, and this may be a way to sort of wrap up this conversation. But the drama is bigger than friction. Yeah. So, A, is there any circumstance where drama is a good thing? And B, what are your top experiences or feedback on how to address that drama? Because it's almost like a flashpoint drama. How do you look at that?
Yeah, drama is excellent in the theatre. I think my sense is that in one way, when drama happens, it is a bit late in the day, and prevention is a lot better than cure. I was brought in to work with a team, and they were literally, I came in, and before the meeting started, 2 people came up to me and said, one person came up and said, I've resigned. I'm so fed up. And so, and somebody else was like, this isn't going to do any good. He's mentally checked out already. He was mentally left the organization. Now, actually, at the end of the day, of that day together, we did a lot of kind of serious like opening up, heart to hearts, and bringing some of the issues out, some of the baggage out. And actually, the person gave it another chance, and there was a new sense of hope. I think often drama happens when people have lost hope, when people have felt there is no way through, when there are issues that have not been actually dealt with. All those things are around.
Maybe another way of putting it is drama is when people have given up on trying to solve the friction or solve the problem.
I think often, I think at some point people just go, okay, it's not been working, this approach. And I think, you can never totally prevent it. But again, talking about language, we talked about that previously. How do you create a language that fosters collaboration, right? I talked about language in terms of accelerating learning and driving insight across the organization. But actually, most organizations don't have the common language for collaboration and for building trust and for communicating and for giving each other grace where it comes to our communication missteps. So we each have our own tendencies that can impact our communication with other people and our collaboration, and that can create misunderstandings and drama, and we think the other person's just being an idiot, but they've just got a psychologically different way of approaching issues. And so a lot of organizations sense this, and they get everyone to do a personality test, and you come out as a lion or a puppy dog or a series of letters, or you're red, or you're
whatever.
Exactly, or you're a nice shade of purple, or whatever you want to be, or you're square, or whatever the thing is. And it's kind of interesting in the moment, but it doesn't get used so often.
It does create awareness. It reinforces awareness. And I wouldn't underestimate the value of people with, creating awareness in people with less experience, helping, instead of it being a top-down driver, it's also you need a bottom-up sort of swell, because it's not just about, as a leader, trying to demonstrate and exhibit and drive behaviours. It's also about educating and people understanding the why. So
Absolutely. No, and I'm a huge fan of all that stuff. I geek out on any of that stuff. I've analyzed myself and I've analyzed clients and teams and millions of dimensions. There are 3 steps on the journey though. The first one is self-understanding. And different tools are better or worse at that, and they give you different angles into yourself. So understanding a bit more about how that works is great. The second level is social understanding. Do I actually understand the team dynamics? So do I understand who my other team members are? And not just who, but how that actually starts to work itself out in conversations. So whenever I do this, people, my clients actually tend to be really surprised because they haven't had those tests in the past really brought into what does it mean around the boardroom table? How's it actually going to show up in this kind of meeting? So I know that I'm more of an extrovert, and I know that you're more task focused, and I know that so-and-so is super organized and process driven or whatever, right? But then how is that going to come up around the coffee machine? How's it going to come up in the meeting, in the client, in the stress situation when you're under a lot of pressure? And how do we adjust our language to help each other? So that second area, social understanding, people do a bit of and often find it really helpful. And they start to get it. Often though, it doesn't get the follow through, and it stays a bit of a passive vocabulary. So it's like when you learn a foreign language, you learn some passive vocabulary, like, oh yeah, in personality terms, I'm an ENTP, or I'm red, or I'm I'm D on disc profile, or whatever it is. But then how do you make it an active vocabulary that is actually used pervasively in the organization? So when the best things I've seen when I've worked with organizations, it's actually when they get to the stage where they start to make a self-depreciating joke, I know I'm a X, this is going to be a classic thing for me to say, right? Because I'm a bit of an X, right? And the other people will go, oh yeah, you might take this the wrong way because I know you, whatever. And it becomes a language. And that's where labels can help. We're way more than labels, and the best tests have a lot of depth and nuance to them. But actually just having some framework to allow us to navigate some of these relational boundaries together can really help.
Yeah.
A lot of executives have said, yeah, I've done all that. We've done all my team, I'm red, they're blue, whatever. But it hasn't become a living language a lens that people really use in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
And when it does become that, again, that's something that can become scalable. You can get every team to understand it. When you bring a new team together, they can very rapidly get a very intuitive understanding, but it has to be simple enough. That's why the complex tests are great for your self-understanding, but they're too complicated to use on, you can barely remember what yourself is, what your profile is, let alone everybody else. So you need to have language which is subtle enough to give you some nuances, but memorable, so that you can actually internalize those learnings yourself. I get excited about this. So
yeah, I see that. So just
my monologue.
To recap the three things are self, social, sort of implementation of understanding, and
and then the actual language. Living language. Okay. Yeah. So self-understanding, a social understanding, and then the living language, which actually starts to permeate other discussions. It's not just saved for the session we did with a coach or a trainer or whatever. It actually bubbles up in business discussions across teams and so forth.
So that sounds like a neat kind of 3-point sort of reference point for dealing with friction and drama. Do you think that's a good place to end?
Yeah.
Do you have some thoughts to add?
Well, no, I think that's a good place to. I mean, probably there's so much we can say, and again, we've got a whole series we can do more on this. But I mean, I've seen the transformational power. I was on a board. I'm more of an innovator. I love to think, how are we going to go to the next level? What do we need to change? What are we going to break to do that? Other people on the board were very much more conservative, guardians of the finances, the operations, not wanting to take too many risks. And we were in conflict for a while, right? We were on this board trying to plot the future of the organization, and there wasn't a lot of trust there. And there was quite a lot of friction. We'd always be analyzing, what are they really trying to do with this? Are they trying to really lock, am I trying to lock them into some crazy plan that's going to burn through all the resources? Or are they secretly trying to just kill the organization off through irrelevance and decline? When we started to have this language for understanding what we're focused on, what our desired impact was, what our style of expressing ourselves was, and where our blind spots were, you suddenly realize actually we need each other, that together we have the ability to really create something much better than if any of us just went into our own corner and built the plan. And you start to realize, who needs to take this to the broader organization? Who's the best person to champion that? How do we stop rubbing up each other the wrong way? All these things, right? And that, for me, that was a transformational moment when we brought together a team of very different, dispersed people, and they suddenly started to act like a team. So it's not the only solution, but I think it's like an infrastructure that you can deploy in your business. If everybody had, and I've got some very specific ideas about which ones of those tests work and don't work and why, but I think when you do have that language to support collaboration, we've also touched on other things, address and amplify, some of these other areas. When this language starts to take root, then you create a culture where issues are dealt with, where people are kind of actually given some grace about their own personality styles and work better together.
Yeah. Okay, so that sounds like you've seen that addressing friction and drama. You see the tools in effect, and you see the impact multiplying effect of that. So that's why you're a believer. So that's why this podcast is about, episode was about talking about this topic Sounds like you could probably talk for another 5 hours.
Yes, and I probably will.
But we'll save some of
Shut
that.
me up quickly before I do it. Shut me up. Come on, Stephanie, keep control of this situation. Come on.
So we'll save some of that for another episode. Shall we talk a little bit about what we're going to cover next time, and then we'll finish with sort of some final thoughts?
Absolutely. So next time we're going to talk about multiplier number 5, which is master transformation. Mastering transformation is important because if you want to do something different, we have to create new behaviors in ourselves and our teams. But most companies don't have a systematic way to do that. So no wonder everything feels hit and miss. We've all been on those offsites where we've come up with a lot of plans and initiatives, and we should be doing this, and then they just die a quiet death. We all know a bunch of things that we should be doing, quotes, in the business, or would be good to do, and yet we can't seem to make happen. We can't get the discipline in there. And so I think that's a key one, right? How do we actually help an organization learn how to master the new habits that it needs to succeed in the future? So that'll be next time's conversation. Brilliant.
So I guess if anyone's interested in learning more about what we've been talking about today, or any of our previous podcasts, just head to the website, the YouTube channel, or subscribe on whatever podcast channel you're on at the moment. The website is xquadrant.com. Final thoughts on the topic of drama and friction?
Yeah, I know a lot of executives are super smart and are really focused on creating a smart organization, having the right strategy, the right processes, the right systems. And that's super important. You know, you want a smart organization, but often they forget the other dimension, which is healthy. Is an organization healthy? Do people enjoy working there? Are conversations productive and take things forward? You know, is there low internal politics, low rate of people leaving because they're totally fed up with their management, all these kind of things? How do you create healthy organisms where the parts of the body communicate well with each other and do so in a life-giving way? And I think that idea of smart and healthy is really important. So often we over-rotate on smart because we feel we can, it's like the hard and soft stuff. You know, it's like smart is like the hard stuff and healthy is the soft stuff. But actually it's the other way around. I mean, in the sense, it's not so hard to come up with a decent strategy. In one level, it feels a lot harder to actually create healthy behaviors in the organization. But actually that is where the value is created. That's why I love doing what I do, because I see the impact on strategy. When you get teams, individuals working in a healthy way together, then you release all that energy and that momentum.
Wow, nice thought to finish on. Thank you, Richard, for a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie, for waking me up from my afternoon slump and having a fantastic conversation.
All right.
Speak soon.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in a position of top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? Well, this is what we do. If you'd like to know more about our community of extraordinary leaders, visit us at xquadrant.com.